So how do we find inverse functions of a logarithm? Well, first of all, we have to remember what we're looking for. If we're given a log function, the inverse function is going to be exponential. You need to keep that in your mind. If you don't know where you're going, it's going to be difficult to get there. Lots of the steps are the same. First thing we want to do is change f of x to y, just like we did earlier when we were finding inverse functions. Next, we want x and y to switch places. And then we need to solve for y. Okay, we know in this case, if we're starting with a log, we're going to end up with an exponential function. We know that the ln, it's an L, remember, is log base e. Oops, that's a y there. What do? Well, we're going to have to isolate our log. And now we can change it to exponential form. So the bases are the same. The answer to a log is the exponent. Now we can just divide by 2. Once we've solved for y, y changes to the inverse. Here are 2 questions. Why don't you try the first one, the g of x, find the inverse function. Remember, you're starting with a log function, so your inverse function should be an exponential function. You changed g of x to y, and then x and y switched places. Now you need to isolate your log. When you're asked to isolate your log, it means you want a positive logarithm. You can't leave this negative here, so you have to multiply both sides by -1. On the left, we have 2 minus x. Now you can change it to exponential form and finish up. Your bases were the same. The answer to your log was the exponent, and then you subtracted 1 from both sides, finding the inverse of g. We'll do this one together. We're asked to find the inverse function, but notice that this time we're starting with an exponential function. So what will we be looking for? The inverse function is a log. Let's follow our steps again. F of x becomes y. X and y switch places. And now we're looking for a logarithm. We're going to have to isolate the power. We subtracted 2 from both sides, divided by 3. Now we can change it to our exponential function, a logarithm. The bases are the same. We know that the answer to a log is the exponent, so it had to equal y. That means the argument was x minus 2 all over 3. We don't want to leave this as log base e. We want to change that to the natural logarithm. This is our inverse function. So none of the steps were different. We just had to remember that we're looking at exponential functions and log functions as the inverse of each other. Make sure you practice enough. Again, there are questions here in your notes that you can use. The solutions are posted on the class Moodle page, but you have lots of other practice in your quizzes and your homework. I should say here, although hopefully you figured this out by now, if the only work you're doing are the lectures and the quizzes, it is not enough practice. Back to my husband, the engineer, he remembers doing 300 questions almost daily. There aren't 300 questions in your quizzes. You need to do more than just the quiz.